Dave, AI is like the hottest topic right now, obviously. But going back to our last topic about interviewing, I wanted to ask you kind of what do you think AI has changed about the interview process? I know cover letters are like a big thing that I think people are just using ChatGPT for. Can you spot it?
Yes. I'd say 3-4 years ago, a good cover letter was like one of the most amazing things that you could do in your application. Now every cover letter is awesome, but then none of them are. So I think it's very obvious when your email, applying for the job, your covering letter, and any other correspondence is written by ChatGPT.
I can't wait to delve into this job experience.
Exactly.
Like,
it's all the same.
Yeah.
So again, be authentic, be yourself. ChatGPT and stuff like that is awesome, but don't get it to do it for you because it will stand out. And even if you think it doesn't, it does. So I think the value of the written word is going to diminish in some areas. But like what we were saying earlier about interviews is like, be authentic, be yourself, and you'll be okay. But use it as a tool to help you. It's excellent, but don't let it apply for a job on your behalf.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about a BBC article the other day to me a bit, and I said, let's save this for the podcast. Do you want to go more in depth about the article and kind of what it said about AI and everything?
Yes, every lunchtime at 12 o'clock, BBC News. This is an article that's not going to age well, by the way, but it's exactly right today. And it's essentially saying that, yes, generative AI is cool, but it's not really being used very much. And I was surprised when I read that, but then I shouldn't have been surprised because I think as humans, we overestimate how quickly something will be, or we overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term. So when ChatGPT came out, we all thought, oh, well, I'm going to be out of a job in 6 months. Which obviously that's not the case. And probably I would say most people would say it's not really changed their lives very much. So we've all probably overestimated that first 2-3 years, but I think we'll underestimate what it's going to be like in 10 years' time. So I think that BBC article is going to look like, some of the like social posts from Blockbuster when they were, slagging off Netflix, things like that. It's not going to do well over time, but it's right now. So the like kind of hype cycle of ChatGPT is maybe kind of gone a bit, but I think over the next 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to see not just lots of new tools coming up. I think you're going to start to see like transformation of how we actually like do our jobs and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think every platform that you use right now is like, click to improve this writing with AI or whatever, and you do that on LinkedIn. I did it once, and I was like, that actually just made it 10 times worse. But so I think there's a long way to go. No offense, LinkedIn. I just like shot our chances of performing well on the algorithm.
But this is probably exactly what happens with every new product. I spoke recently at a conference about like the .com bubble, which is such an area of history that really fascinates me because like the technology of the internet worked. Everything they said was going to happen, maybe not all for the better, but it all happened. But yet, like all these companies lost so much, like millions and tens of millions, hundreds of millions, because they all went, let's just put .com on the end of our name, and now we'll have a website, and now we'll just run a business that makes no sense. And like bar a few notable exceptions, you don't put .com at like the end of your name anymore. And I think it's the same with AI. Now it's like, let's add this chatbot, let's add this AI assistant, let's do this. And I think when I was probably the same, to be honest. It's probably just people clambering to shoehorn AI into their like current product. Whereas I think the real value will probably come in like reimagining how we do things. So like, within like 5 minutes, it felt, of ChatGPT coming out, there was this app called Chat PDF where you could upload a PDF, ask it a question, it would tell you anything about the like document. And it wasn't really very good with big like documents. But I think that's probably an example of just shoehorning AI into something. Whereas what I think the reimagination might be is, do we need to write big 500-page documents anymore? Type thing. We can just like build this GPT that you can sort of interact with. So I think watch out for that. I think we'll have to just sort of suck up for the next 18 months or a couple of years of just AI additions onto every business, every bit of software, and we put an AI assistant into our software. So I'm doing the exact same thing, that I'm slagging off here. But I think we'll start to see brand new ways of doing things. Like, I think back to the like .com bubble. It was just doing what they're doing and adding some internet, and maybe the internet wasn't quite there or things like that. But now, you know, I would imagine in like 1999, you probably wouldn't have imagined now that a smartphone and Uber and DoorDash and Netflix and stuff, you know, so it'll transform how we do things, but that's not happened yet. Yeah.
I think it's interesting to think about, like, in 1999, if you told someone all of these changes, it might sound actually scary, like almost how we think about AI now and how it's going to transform our world. But when it comes, like, when the changes come little by little and like you actually see how it like transforms the way you do things, it's not like as scary, and it's not like it'll, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, I think everyone like talks about like, you know, there was like immediately like an article that like all engineers, all lawyers are going to lose their jobs and all this, and I don't think that'll happen at all. Like I think there's like something like the US Census in like 1950 to like 2005. There was only one job that had disappeared, and that was the elevator. You know, the like person that's in the elevator. I think there'll be less of some jobs, but there'll be loads of brand new things. Like in like August 2022, there was 0 prompt engineers on planet Earth. Go onto any job site now and type prompt engineer. There's like it's now just a job that's come from nowhere. It can command like hundreds of thousands of pounds per year. You know, it's such an in-demand thing. That's a job that didn't exist. There were people like testing a lot of generative AI stuff. I think we're just going to see a shift in jobs moving from here to over here. I don't think anyone knows what that'll look like in the end. I think it's quite exciting in a way, but I would always say that it's like tasks from your job might become automated, but I think technology does that anyway. You know, I think generative AI is just the next step. So elements of your job will, but not the job as a whole. Maybe like, you know, a team of 4 engineers might be able to do previously what a team of 8 engineers did, but you still need, you know, that like core thing. And I think that's it's quite exciting to see. But anyone can easily stand out or easily stay ahead by just, you know, learning a bit about prompt engineering, maybe learning a little bit of Python coding to help stitch stuff together. You know, and I saw an article recently that, you know, you can expect a 50% uplift on your pay if you're good at your job, plus you can do all of these things. So yeah, I think it will be easy to stay ahead. Anyone that's interested and just keeps up to date with what's happening. Because I don't think anyone can say with certainty what the next 5, 10, 15 years will look like. But the direction of travel is we're going to lean more heavily on these technologies, probably for the worst in some areas, but hopefully in a lot of areas for the better.
Do we want to talk about what we were doing this time a year ago? Salus was tapping into AI for the first time, I believe, and we hosted a hackathon. So maybe I'll talk a bit about that, my experience, and then I'll let you talk about the product and what it was and what it is now. But I started at Salus about a year ago now, and it was during the middle of a hackathon. So there was about 10 people in the office that don't usually work there. I walk in on my first day, and I don't know who works there actually because everybody's running around trying to build this product. And it was a really exciting time to start actually, but I definitely got thrown into the deep end. But no, it was a good way to start actually. But do you want to talk about what you were building?
Yes. In retrospect, it probably wasn't the best week to get you started, but yeah. So we'd actually been for quite a few years trying to change the way in which we do some things with new technology. And we were actually halfway through something when ChatGPT got launched, so we had to kind of throw that in the bin because, you know, it couldn't really compare. But we talked a lot about AI. We've done a lot of research with it. I thought, and I still think there's loads of really good applications for it in process safety. But we were like, well, let's like build something. So we decided, one of my engineers and I were just chatting one day and we're like, let's just like build something. So we took a week out, the entire company, at the time was maybe like 6 or 7 of us, and we got some extra developers in, and, you know, we got a deep learning engineer in, and for the whole week, we didn't do anything else apart from build this product. You know, and even like you on your first day, I was like, right, make me a landing page for the, you know, like site and things like that, you know, and I'd probably done that before I'd even like showed you where the fire exits were. And we did it. Yeah, we built a product called HasOp AI. So we were still using the cliched putting AI on the end of your product. And
.com.
Yeah, absolutely.
HasOp.com.
Yeah. And what that was is HasOp, it's a type of risk assessment, but in process safety, but it's so common it's like used as a verb. You'll like HasOp something. So it's probably not quite right to say, but we trained it on like a particular application, and it was, you know, could you type in what it is your HAZOP in, and it'll tell you like, you know, some of the like risks, some of the stuff likely to come up in the workshop, some questions to prompt the like team with. So it was just about, could you grease the wheels? Could you augment the like role of engineers? And we built that. We built a landing page. We put some like socials out on it, and 80 companies booked a demo. But really, that demo was a bit of a Trojan horse. That was me actually trying to find out what people thought about, you know, the like use of AI and process safeties, you know, like things that they'd been working on. And the biggest learning for me from that was that it was probably too early. People were still really skeptical of it. And I think they were right to do that. I've like shifted from like thinking, oh, we can get this to do stuff for us, where now it's like, no, we can get it to stitch together a few things that we do, you know. So I think removing AI from it, focusing on actually, no, this is anything that we build will be an engineering-led product. Generative AI might serve you up the like text at the end or hoover up the text at the start, but it's actually like computer code and engineering libraries and stuff in between. So I certainly like that was a huge learning to like play down the role of AI, because I think when someone says AI, really what they mean today is generative AI, large language models. But I think what a lot of people still think of, oh, there's this big black box and we don't know what's going on in there. So, you know, you take the HAZOP AI thing that we did. It's you know, the video's still online, hazop.ai. And it's really cool. You can like describe this equipment and the like, you know, oh, there's oil coming through at high pressure into this tank and there's this valve. And the outputs are really good, but there's not a black box that we just hand it over to the AI. I think there's something like 20 or 30 like really simple steps that it just performs each time and then like gives the answer. So I could tell you at each phase like what it's doing, you know. But I still think a lot of people don't think that's what's actually happening. And you see a lot of AI products out there that, you know, are quite inconsistent or quite easy to manipulate. They probably are a bit, you know, just leave it like a like black box. But such a good learning for us in terms of how difficult it is to build something, in terms of getting what the market really thought. And then, yeah, we were actually able to use that. One of the customers that we spoke to were like, look, not for HAZOP, but could you build us something for something else? And given what we'd learned, we were like, yeah, that's a way better application. And yeah, and then we've like gone ahead doing that since.
So I know you just touched on it a little bit for sure about like augmentation versus actually getting it to do something for you. But can you talk maybe a little bit more about the role that you see AI playing in process safety specifically?
Yeah, I think that process safety is almost like one of the best like places to use AI, because it's obviously really important. It's lives are at stake if you get it wrong. So you've got to get it 100% right. You know, obviously it's very talented people that do digital marketing, but if you have an AI that helps you write social posts, if it's a bit wrong, that's okay. You know, it's quite easy to like change, and nobody's going to get hurt if there's a bit of a mistake in like some like copy. Whereas if you're using it to like help with risk assessment, if it gives you bad advice or tells you something's okay that's not okay, you know, that's not where we want to be. So you've got to get it right from like day one. But morally, legally, people still have to be involved in some of these big risk assessments. So you can't, even if you wanted to, take away people. If someone invented the perfect AI machine that could HAZOP any bit of process plant on planet Earth, that's a button that you wouldn't want to press, because you need to have people engaged. So you've got to, so it's got to be highly accurate, and it's also got to augment the role of people. So I think because you've got those like boundaries, and that's a really exciting challenge, we thought. And we have targeted getting a similar result to what GitHub Copilot got. So I mean, it's quite a controversial product because I think they like trained it on computer code that other people had like made, but in their experiments, what they've done is it's basically like a co-pilot sitting on your shoulder. You're typing computer code and telling it what you want to do, and it says, oh, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And overall, the tests they've done is they found it saved people basically half the like time. 9 out of 10 people said it was higher quality, you know, like code at like the end, and 8 out of 10 or whatever said that, you know, it definitely saved them time, or, you know, so it performed very well. Yeah, so like we've said, well, if you're going to use AI in process safety, it's got to improve quality of risk assessment. It's got to improve the consistency of risk assessment, and can you do it in like up to 50% less time? So those are the things that we are aiming for, and it's not about, I don't think, removing the role of people. It's about enhancing the role of people.
Awesome. So I know, I'm not a safety professional, but I know that HAZOPs and other risk assessment kind of methods have not really changed in the last couple of decades. Is that right?
Oh, I think it's even more than that. I think, take something like a HAZOP, and it's a really well regarded. It's a really good methodology, but probably the overhead projector is the biggest, shift in technology that, biggest change that's seen, since this 60s when it was invented.
So can you elaborate on kind of how AI will just completely transform, or will it obviously augment the role, or do you think it'll just totally transform how we do HAZOPs?
I think we chose HAZOPs to begin with, but I think that's actually probably one of the hardest areas to use it. But a lot of process safety and HAZOPs no different. It's there's a lot of waste in the process, almost like you're going over the same stuff again. You have to talk through things in a certain way. It's got to be written down by a scribe. It's got to then be put in a certain format and sent out as a report. So there's lots of opportunities to kind of grease the wheels on that a bit. I think with these things, the value is actually in the discussion. I think sometimes we can become too focused on the task of doing the risk assessment rather than talking about the risk or solving the problem at hand or making the decision at hand. It becomes about completing the task of risk assessment. So I think we will see, hopefully for the better, but I suspect some of them won't be, people using AI in quite innovative ways for established processes like HAZOP. We gave it a go, and I think there's definitely good things that you can do. We've made one product, for example, that looked at past risk assessments to prompt you, but then it's all about the quality of the underlying data. So if those risk assessments aren't very good, then the output's not going to be very good. But I'm probably more excited about some of the reimagination of process safety. So instead of AI for X that already exists, what about AI for Z that doesn't exist? One example might be there's a thing called operational risk assessment. That's where you've got a bit of safety equipment or safety system that's got an impairment. You can risk assess, is it okay to keep going with this impairment? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. You decide, well, what else do we have to do to make it okay? How long is it going to be like this for? What's our forward plan? So you do a traditional risk assessment, but really there's a series of questions that you want to answer. So, what one idea for a product might be, well, why don't we just make a questionnaire that you have to answer these questions? A little AI copilot might give you a little hint of have you done enough? Does this meet the regulations? Have you thought about X? So it's a group of engineers or a group of professionals answering questions, having a discussion. The AI is capturing it all, and a magic button might convert that to look like a more traditional risk assessment. The AI has not done the risk assessment. You've done it in your discussion. All the AI's done is move some data about. So then what you have is a higher value conversation. It's probably taken less time. And if you've got an AI working within the same bounds each time, it'll be a much more consistent output. And that would lead to better risk assessment, better decisions, and ultimately a safer industry. So I'm quite excited to see what are the new things that people are going to come up with, because the more we learn about it with the products that we've built, there's things it's very good at, there's things it's very not good at, and the things it's good at are actually the harder things to make. So I think the reimagining of some existing process safety methodologies and practices is actually what's really exciting.
Do you want to talk specifically a bit about what you ended up building after HAZOP AI and what that led to?
Yeah, so a company said, we've got lots of offshore wells, some under the sea, some on platforms, and we're trying to decommission them all, but some of them have got issues. So we're kind of bogged down with the administration of performing risk assessment to help prioritize what do we need to fix, what do we need to leave, what wells do we need to shut down, what wells do we need to take out, and was there something we could do that they could get through more risk assessments in less time. So but whilst maintaining quality and definitely getting greater consistency. So we made an AI that does a few things. One is they describe the impairment, and then based on that company's own standards, based on regulations and governance, and even just our own understanding, it might ask some questions back. Well, you've mentioned this, what about this? And the person might go, oh yeah, I haven't actually. So there's a bit of back and forth. And what that means is that then when the impairment and the status of the well and the risk is really well described, so the person that compiles that can get that done really quickly, and it won't waste anyone's time that they take that to the next phase and they get told to go back and do it again because it's missing info. So that really helped, and that like works well. And then the next bit is it kind of pre-populates, gives them some things to think about. It lists some standards that it thinks that they failed to like meet, and that allows the team to go, oh yes, well, you have to do that. Then the team on their own without the AI do the risk assessment, but they know that they've got all the input info and they know that they've got a list of standards that they've not met. And then at the very end, before they send it for review, it checks everything that's been written down, and there's like a sort of 10 questions that it goes through about, is there an adequate forward plan? Have they reduced risk to as low as they can? Have they engaged the right people? And that means that then when that package goes off to be reviewed and approved and executed, there's a lot less chance it'll be recycled, or there'll be like follow-up questions or challenges, because they know it's done to a high quality. So it's the same people that are involved, and we need those technical experts. But what it means is that, you know, all the info's been put on a plate for them. It makes it very easy for them. And then they get that little like check and balance before it goes to the like next stage. And that goes right back to, yeah, we think that might, you know, there's still some things to iron out, but I think that could get us down to half the time, higher quality and greater consistency. So I think that's the type of sort of tools that we're focusing on, things that can augment the role of people rather than a magic button that'll give you a full risk assessment. Yeah.
No AI takeover at Salus.
There will be no AI takeover at Salus, yeah.
Dave, quick, go. What are your ideas for implementing AI at Salus in other areas of the business?
Okay, so maybe not at Salus, right? But, and you know, this might not fully be legal, but no, going back to my point about reimagining, right? So someone pitched me an idea about, could we build almost like a chatbot for a safety case? You know, so a safety case is this really big document that an offshore duty holder has to produce to demonstrate to the government that it's safe for them to operate. But these can be quite big, like 500, 1,000. I've seen one that's 2,000 pages. And you've also got to engage the workforce in your safety case and your major accidents. So it can be quite difficult to have this big document for the regulator, but also take the workforce along. So someone was like, oh, well, maybe we could build a chatbot and stuff. And I think that's a great idea. And that's an example of using AI for the existing process. But, you know, the more I think about it, it's like, well, what if you don't even need these documents at all? And actually it's a GPT that has all this information, you know, because the regulations require you to build a case. It's got to be structured. It's got to be electronic. It's got to be available to the workforce, and so on and so on. And actually, it's not a million miles away from describing what a GPT is. So instead of someone like me having to sit and write this really big document and have it reviewed and make some changes and engage the workforce and get feedback, what if all the info was compiled just into a GPT, and that was available for the regulator, that was available for the safety people, for senior management, and for the workforce? You know, you could tell it who you were, and that might change how it gives you information. So
So sorry.
We're going to keep this in, definitely. But yeah, so I think that that would be an idea. I don't think strictly that's something that the regulations would be allowed to do right now.